Hi, it's Ashleigh from Sweet Dreams Bake Shop, and welcome back to my channel where I make a lot of cake and cookie decorating tutorials as well as give a lot of baking business tips. And as per usual, please stay till the end of the video so you can see my pricing guide for this 3-tiered fondant detailed cake. So I've made many tutorials showing you how to crumb coat a cake, but if you're not familiar with how to do that, please check this out in the right hand corner. That will tell you everything that you need to know, and then you can come on back to this video where I show you how to cover the cake with fondant and how to add those details on. So just a few tips when working with fondant in general. You really have to find the fondant brand that works for you. I personally love Satin Ice, but I have seen it perform differently when I'm in a different region. So for me, I live in British Columbia. I absolutely love Satin Ice, but you might find something that works better for you. I need something that's pliable and fairly forgiving and won't dry out on me, and that is exactly what Satin Ice gives me. If your fondant ever feels like it's a little bit too sticky, but you don't want to continually keep adding cornstarch because then that's going to dry everything out, add a little bit of shortening to your fondant and then knead it together. This will make sure that it's nice and pliable, but also not too sticky. And then of course, when rolling out your fondant, you do want to put down a small layer of cornstarch to roll it out so nothing sticks. Keep that fondant moving. It's just like any other dough, like a sugar cookie dough. You would do the same thing. Roll out your fondant thin enough so that you still get that crisp edge of whatever your cake looks like underneath, but don't roll it too thin or else it will start ripping on you. You also want to make sure that you pay special attention to the bottom of the cake. This is really where you're going to want to focus that sealing process of the fondant to the cake. Now, if you use something like Italian meringue buttercream, you don't have to add any shortening. You don't have to steam your cake prior to placing this on. But if you use something like an American buttercream, then you are going to want to steam your cake with a clothing steamer or just add a little bit of shortening so that it adheres to the cake. Smooth out your fondant with the fondant smoother, and once you have the desired effect, you can just leave it. Now, some people like to just leave their layers dry a little bit and then stack it. I like to stack things right away so that I can avoid cracking of the fondant when I place things on there. When I'm making cakes with multiple colors, I generally like to stay within the same palette. So what I'll do is I'll take that base color and then I'll add different colors to it so that I'm kind of staying within that same vein, and it really will come all together once everything is done. I used Fondant, but if you don't have Fondant food colorant, you can use gel food colorant. You just might find that you need to add a little bit more shortening and a little bit more cornstarch to balance it all out. Fondant just takes the guesswork out of all of that. Now I'm going to start stacking my cakes, and I should mention that prior to decorating the cakes, they were nice and chilled. So then this way we don't have to deal with anything sliding around, and you're not going to see any of those layers coming out. And you really want to make sure that you support your cake, but I will say that I did go a little bit overboard with the amount of support that I needed for that top cake. It's only a 4-inch, so I probably could have gotten away with no board whatsoever in there, but this was going to be transported, so I did want to be on the safe side. My friend Ollie and I were making a ton of different Little Mermaid themed desserts as I was making this cake, so it was quite chaotic in here, which you can check out in the right hand corner. So when I discovered that my steamer was broken during this part, I was very, very stressed. So if you have a steamer available to you, definitely use it. Just get any old clothing steamer as long as it produces steam. Steam your cake, and then that way you can adhere all of these fondant details very, very easily. For the first little bit here, I had to adhere it with water, which does work. It just slows you down quite a bit. So I could not wait until my husband came back with the brand new steamer. I felt like the addition of this ribbon was very 2012, but I just felt like this cake needed a little bit more razzle-dazzle. I suppose I could have made it out of fondant and then covered it all with edible glitter, but like I said, and like you can see in the background, we were on a bit of a time crunch. So for some of the under the sea work here, I just did it by hand, but a lot of the things were also made with molds or chocolate molds as well. My friend Alia is a pastry chef, and you guys know I'm not super into eating desserts, but oh my goodness, this was the best cake I've ever had in my entire life, and it was the perfect pick-me-up while I was trying to get through this. So first I made a head that I thought was really pretty, but I actually wanted to go with something a little bit different because I know that my sister really loves kind of cartoon-like figures rather than real-life figures, and this was for her daughter, so I decided to go with a more cartoony look. Now to create the tail here, I just kind of made a tail-like shape, and we'll add on the end of the tail later. I like to do this part first, and I'm just creating a scale-like pattern using this tool that I found. Really, you can find any tool and make it a cake tool. For the longest time, I didn't have any cake tools, and I just used toothpicks, chopsticks, and my hands. So you'll see here, what I did was I first secured the body and everything, and when you're doing a sitting character, this is probably the easiest type of character to start out with because there's that backing there, which is going to guarantee that your character won't slump down. Slumping characters are something that I really struggled with when I first started making fondant characters. Another suggestion is go with gum paste or mix Tylose powder in with your fondant just so it solidifies a little bit faster. Keep in mind though, you will have to work faster as well so that it doesn't dry out on you. I wanted to make this character more of an interpretation of the Little Mermaid instead of the exact type of character that looks like a Barbie on a cake, if you know what I mean. So I just kind of made sure that I utilized the same colors, but really went with what I normally do for characters, which is just really, really simple faces. This time I actually had her looking down at her hands, and I added in all of those small little details with a little bit of edible black paint. If you don't have edible black paint, then you can use a little bit of edible food gel with a tiny amount of vodka just to thin it out a little bit. And I also gave her some blushy cheeks using a little bit of petal dust, and you do want to make sure that you tap off those brushes so that it ends up on her cheeks and not all over the place. It's kind of like when you're applying makeup to yourself. And then finally, I just took pieces of red fondant and rolled them out and adhered that with a little bit of water. I felt like the cake was missing something, so I decided to add my niece's age. I don't normally do this. I'm not huge on adding people's names or ages to cakes, but sometimes it does call for it. My husband eventually did come home with the steamer, so thank you to him, and it made this part so much easier. Now, once you add on sixlets or sprinkles, you don't want to steam your cake again. So I realize that I'm steaming parts of the cake, but I actually am being careful about not steaming the sixlet portion. If you steam the sixlet portion, it kind of takes off the sheen and it makes it all kind of muddy looking. I know I've talked about how much I love my steamer, but I'm going to say one more thing about it. When you steam your cakes, what that does is it kind of turns back the time a little bit on the fondant, meaning that it's not going to be super, super dry. So it adds that little bit of moisture in there, which means when you press in something like a sixlet or an edible pearl, it doesn't create a crack. It just indents beautifully on that cake, and that is exactly what you're looking for. You'll also notice how much more saturated that color is. Now, it's not going to stay shiny like this. If you do want to keep your fondant nice and shiny, what you will need to do is you'll need to make a mixture of vodka or some other extract like a lemon extract and a little bit of corn syrup. Then you're going to brush that on the cake and then it will stay shiny. I've made a lot of Little Mermaid birthday cakes, one of them being for my niece as well. I love this one. It's just so classic. It comes together so beautifully and it went really, really nicely with all of the treats. Now let's get into the pricing of this cake. For a second, we're just going to ignore the sizing of this particular cake. I wouldn't sell cakes that are 8, 6, and 4 inch just because you need to make it worth it for yourself. So you can offer this, but the base pricing would be for a 10, 8, and 6. This just ensures that, yes, of course you're giving up more product, but the work that you're putting into it is worth it. So based on a 10, 8, and 6, this would be $475 Canadian. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you can be part of the Sweetie fam. Right now, I'm uploading weekly, so make sure you hit that notification bell so you know when I upload. Also, be sure to comment, request, or ask a question. I love hearing from you guys. Bye!